I greet you, ladies and gentlemen, even at this time. What I want to basically do today in today's lecture is to cover a model which is known as the ISLM BP model. This model is also called the ISLM BOP model. In most of the literature, it is called the Mundell-Fleming. It is called the Mundell-Fleming model. This model is an extension. It is an extension. It is an extension of the traditional ISLM model. I would like to note that the ISLM model is a closed economy model. It is a closed economy model. Or a model which is termed in economics as an autarkic model. A model which is based on the assumption of autarky. That is an economy which is closed. An economy which is closed. So, with the Mundell-Fleming model, what the two economists did in the 1960s is that they developed a framework for analyzing the determination of equilibrium national income within the ISLM context for a small open economy. The two economists are Robert Mundell and Marcus Fleming. They made an almost simultaneous discovery of this model in the 1960s whilst analyzing open economies. So this model can be used to analyze the balance of payments. Its main intervention is that it can be used to analyze the balance of payments. We incorporate it to take into account international trade and international finance. So, what is the import of this model? As covered in the previous lecture, a set of slides, the model is based on the IS curve. It is based on the IS curve. It is based on the IS curve, which basically is y is equal to c vector of y minus t plus I plus c for a closed economy, where capital letter C is consumption expenditure, it's consumer spending. And capital letter Y is income. That is our national income. And capital letter T is the level of taxation. And capital letter I is investment spending. And capital letter G is government. It is government spending. It is government spending. So the IS curve, as we know from our previous coverage, it covers equilibrium. It covers equilibrium in the goods market. In the goods market. It covers equilibrium in the goods market. And then we have got the LM curve. The LM curve, the purpose of the LM curve is to capture equilibrium or equilibrium points within the money markets, is to capture money market equilibrium. That is the purpose of the LM curve. So we're just doing a review. We're just doing a review of the LM curve. The LM curve, which is also called the liquidity preference money supply curve. And by way of review, IS is the interest rate investment savings function or curve. This is the liquidity preference, which means money demand, and money supply curve, because it's a curve which shows equilibrium points in the money markets. Just grammatically, we know that on the vertical axis, we've got the interest rate, and on the y-axis, we've got national income, and the LM curve is upward sloping like that. That's your LM curve. This side, we've got interest rates. Interest rates. And on the horizontal axis, we've got national income. We've got national income. So we know that equilibrium within the ISLM model, equilibrium within the ISLM model, the equilibrium is attained when the IS curve, which is downward sloping, intersects the LM curve, which is upward sloping. The equilibrium level of national income occurs at Y0, and the interest rate will be R0. And the equilibrium point will be E0 at that point, where the two curves intersect each other. So what now remains is for me to introduce the balance of payments schedule. It's for me to introduce the balance of payments schedule, which I'm going to do just shortly. The balance of payments schedule. The balance of payments schedule. Still on the horizontal axis, we've got the national income, which is normally represented by the letter Y. And on the vertical axis, we've got the interest rate, which is normally represented by a small letter I or capital letter R. So the balance of payments curve for perfect capital mobility is usually drawn as a horizontal line. This depicts perfect capital mobility. That's the PP curve. That's the PP curve. It is the PP curve for perfect capital mobility. For perfect capital mobility. I need to note that along the BP curve, the balance of payments is equal to 0. As you can see, this curve is horizontal to show perfect capital mobility. Under the BP curve, we expect a balance of payments deficit, which is a balance of payments of less than 0. A balance of payments deficit, which is a balance of payments of less than 0. And above the BP curve, we expect the balance of payments to be positive. We expect the balance of payments to be positive, to be greater than 0. To be greater than 0. So along the BP curve, we've got a balance of payments balance. Above, we've got a balance of payments surplus. And then underneath, we've got a balance of payments deficit. We've got deficit points. In general, above the balance of payments curve, we have got a balance of payments surplus, and below the balance of payments curve, we've got a balance of payments deficit. That is a negative situation where in this situation, outflows are greater than inflows. Since the balance of payments records flows of goods and services into the economy, including money flows as well. And then above, we expect outflows. Above, we expect outflows. To be smaller than inflows. Above, we expect our outflows to be less than the inflows. Below, the outflows are greater than inflows. At the BP curve, we expect both inflows and outflows to be equal. Along the BP curve, both inflows and outflows are equal. So that's the situation. And then what now remains is for me to unite the equilibrium in the economy, the internal equilibrium with the external equilibrium. So that is our next part of CON, to incorporate the balance of payments curve within the ISLM framework. That is our next part of CON. So we start with the IS, which we draw as IS1. And then we go to the LM, which I will draw as LM1. And then we draw our BP curve. our PP curve, which I will label PP. So at this point, E0, we have got Y0 and the interest rate, which is R0. At this equilibrium point, we have got a general equilibrium. At this point, we have got a general equilibrium. And this general equilibrium is such that there is at E0, we have goods market equilibrium, goods market, comma, money market, and external equilibrium. And then the question at this point, before I ask the question, or I pose the question rather, at this point, we don't have a balance of payments deficit. We don't have a money market surplus or a real goods market surplus. We just have a general balance in the economy. There is no tendency for the economy to deviate from the interest rate of, say, R0 or from the level of national income of Y0. But let us assume all of a sudden there is a liquidity crunch in the economy. If there is a liquidity crunch in the economy, we know that the tightness in liquidity will cause an increase in interest rates. But how does the liquidity crunch play out? It plays out as an upward shift of the LM curve, as an upward shift of the LM curve from LM1 to LM2. From LM1 to LM2. Now, if the IS curve remains fixed and the balance of payments curve remains fixed, at the intersection of LM2 and IS1, we have an internal equilibrium, which I'm going to call E1. At E1, we have an internal equilibrium. But the challenge with this internal equilibrium is that it is associated with a balance of payments surplus. It's associated with the balance of payments surplus. Why the balance of payments surplus? Because at a higher interest rate of R1, there will be net capital inflows to the domestic economy. And it is these net capital inflows to the domestic economy which will occasion a balance of payment surplus. We know that whilst net capital inflows may appear attractive in the short run, in the long run, they may translate to serious net capital outflows when the investors of those funds from other countries, they start to collect their dividends and also their interest on the loans that they're providing to the domestic economy via the money and the capital markets. So it's a situation which is not sustainable in the long run. So E1, whilst it's an internal equilibrium, it is not sustainable because it's an internal equilibrium which is associated with the balance of payment surplus. So what the government may actually need to do to remedy a situation where a liquidity crunch has caused the LM curve to shift from LM1 to LM2, the government may implement a range of policies. For instance, the government may implement, contractionary fiscal policy. It may implement contractionary fiscal policy to establish a general macroeconomic equilibrium, which also involves having equilibria, a simultaneous equilibrium with the balance of payments sector of the economy. The IS curve, as we can see, it will then shift from IS1 to IS2 with the contractionary fiscal policy. And this contractionary fiscal policy may be operationalized by reducing government spending and or increasing taxation as a way of dampening aggregate demand in the economy. And in the final analysis, our level of national income will shrink from Y0 to Y1, and a new equilibrium will be reestablished at point E2. At point E2, we'll be having a new equilibrium, which occurs at a point where the balance of payments is equal to 0. And once more, there is a general macroeconomic equilibrium, which is an open economy equilibrium. We can also experiment for a situation where a shock to this simple economy causes a balance of payments deficit. We can illustrate this diagrammatically, where an internal shock leads to a balance of payments deficit. And we work out how it can be remedied, this shock to the domestic economy, how it can be remedied, because you can have a scenario where things within the domestic economy, they may become upset, and as a result, they occasion a situation where the external sector would be out of balance, whilst the internal sector is in balance. So we want to check how that can be remedied. So still we've got our Y on the horizontal axis, and our capital letter R or I will just return the I for consistency for the interest rate on the vertical axis. So we start with a balance of payments, P, the balance of payments, BP curve, which is still horizontal. And then and a general macroeconomic equilibrium, which we attain at E1, at that point, which I'll call point E1. And the IS curve, we have IS1 and LM1. So the disturbance, we can say, let there be a situation which increases money supply in the domestic economy. Any situation which may lead to an increase in money supply, maybe a reduction in the bank rate by the central bank to incentivize production. This will obviously shift the LM curve downwards from LM1 to LM2. a reduction in the bank rate would lead to a downward shift of the LM curve from LM1 to LM2. When we are looking at LM2 and IS1, again, we have got an internal equilibrium, which is associated with a higher level of national income of Y2. But this higher level of national income is coming at the opportunity cost of a balance of payments. It's coming at the opportunity cost of a balance of payments deficit. We have a BP deficit. Because recall that we said below the balance of payments curve, we've got a balance of payments deficit. So how does the government work to eradicate the balance of payments deficit? The government will have to eradicate the balance of payments deficit by any one of the many measures. It can use import quotas. If it introduces import quotas or import tariffs, basically we would expect our balance of payments curve to shift downwards. We would expect our balance of payments curve to shift downwards. To say BP, to say BP1 from BP0. So if our balance of payments curve shifts downwards as a result of trade policy, say the imposition of import quotas or the imposition of an import tariff, assuming that there will be no retaliation, a macroeconomic equilibrium will be reestablished at that level of national income Y2, which was associated with a higher level of national income. And the interest rate will decrease from I0 to I1. Or to use the previous way of writing, it will decrease from R0 to R1. The interest rate will decline. But basically, the policies that can be made, which can be implemented by government in a bid to address a situation where the equilibrium has been, the general equilibrium has been disturbed within the Mundell-Fleming framework. So I feel that for the time being, we have done justice in introducing the Mundell-Fleming model or the ISLMPP model. I believe you benefited from this exposition. I will see you in our next lecture, where I will be covering the next topic on stabilization policies and other related issues. Thank you so much for listening in. Have a nice day.